welcome to our second episode of GirlExec. We are so excited to be with you. I am here with my beautiful friend Isha Williams, and we're here to talk about the best career advice that we've received. Isha, over the past 20 years, what has been the best advice you've received?
Chris, I actually remember the best piece of advice I received because it
Mhm.
was so profound. It was 14 years ago when I was early in my career, and the global president of my company came to speak at a company meeting. And he said, most people spend the majority of their time trying to improve upon their weaknesses.
Mm,
Instead, people should focus their energy on identifying and leveraging their strengths. And it sounds like a simple piece of advice, but again, I thought it was so meaningful because, of course, we have to be competent at our
mhm,
job. You
mhm.
can't be awful at any fundamental requirement of your job. But when you can really understand what it is that you do above
Yes.
those around you, what it is that God has given you, where you are special, where you have a greater sense of impact, if
Mhm.
you can find opportunities to demonstrate that, you will shine. And so for me, that was a turning point in thinking about how I dedicate my energy to succeed
Mhm.
in my career.
Mhm. That's excellent. That
What
is
about you?
excellent. So, mine started with a quote, and it is bloom where you are planted.
Mm,
It was shared with me by a mentor maybe 10 years ago. Absolutely love the man. And as he spoke about it, two things resonated with me about it. The first thing was always be prepared because when you're blooming, just like when a flower or a tree is blooming, there's a
right.
preparation season or process that no one sees. So when I come into a meeting, a presentation, some kind of pitch, I've done all my homework. I know what I want to say. And I think even more importantly, I know who's in the room, what their priorities are, what their general disposition might be, so that when I'm presenting, I'm finding the intersection of the two things because I've prepared well, and people notice that. The second part of that that resonates with me is capitalizing on the moment. When you've prepared, you're preparing for that moment, but you also know where you're trying to be. And this is
Right.
part of how I work, right? I'm thinking down the road and I'm capitalizing on a moment. So an idea may come up, a question, a problem, and I capitalize on that moment. And to me, that's what blooming where you're planted really means.
First of all, I have a T-shirt from Target that I bought 5 years ago. It says "Bloom where you are planted." So I absolutely love that piece of advice,
Oh,
and I think it ties into what I was saying because
mm-hmm,
to leverage your strengths, you do have to know what they are. And for a
mm-hmm,
lot of people, it's hard to truly understand where they're special versus the norm.
mm-hmm,
And
mm-hmm.
so another piece of advice within to prepare to know what your strengths are. Ask
Yes.
your colleagues, ask your girlfriends, ask your family members. Listen, tell me the two or three things that you think make me special. And then you can put it into action. So when I heard this advice all those many years ago, as one practical way that you can live this advice, I'm strong at communication. I love
Absolutely.
communicating with others and I love communicating in front of groups. So, in a work setting, there are always these corporate conferences where little groups go off and you brainstorm, and one person has to volunteer to be the one to share out on behalf of the group. And I would start to volunteer myself proactively to be that person and to be
Mm-hmm,
in those settings. What it does is it allows me to shine in front of the organization in the area of my strength. It allows people to say, who's that person who's always, sharing those points from the group? And it starts to build your brand and your profile. So if you are
mm-hmm,
good at strategy and you know the company is trying to put together some type of group to solve an issue or a culture group,
mm-hmm.
volunteer to be a part of that group. If you are creative, volunteer to help plan the company Christmas party. It can be big, it can be small, but find ways to shine or to bloom in your particular area of strength. It will help build your career profile every time.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And it's clear your strength of communication. You shared that with absolute conviction. Absolute conviction.
No, thank you, Chris. Any final way that you can share how you have put that advice into practice, or how you think other people can do so practically? The bloom where you're planted, which is beautiful.
Absolutely. My most recent corporate experience was in academic healthcare. Healthcare I was familiar with, academia I was not. So I was very intentional in part of my preparation to build relationships, to meet with faculty, to meet with physicians, to understand what's going on in the healthcare market and how that connects to academia and the research side specifically. And what I found was that then allowed me to take my expertise connected to your example, to take my expertise and intersect my expertise with what was needed in the business to really find my solution for success at that organization. And I think anyone could take that and follow the same path.
I completely agree, Chris. I hope that today's advice has been helpful. Find what your strength is, find ways to bloom, and continue to shine. Please join us for our next episode of GirlExec, where we will tackle the issue of emotional intelligence. A lot of people talk about that word. We'll get into practically what it means and a few tips on how to improve your emotional intelligence from wherever you are as your starting point. Thanks so much for joining us.